Hey there guys, this is Don from Prana-Tech. In today's video I'm going to be doing a review of the YesWelder YWM-211P. This is their pulse capable and double pulse capable MIG welder that can do aluminum, steel, and stainless steel. This is one of the more intriguing technologies that have come out in the last couple decades is the pulse welding of aluminum. And I've been curious about it for a while, and I'll have to say that normally I don't contact companies and ask them to do a review of their welder. But this one, I saw a few other people do reviews of it, and I've done a bunch of reviews of YesWelder products, but I didn't feel like they did the welder justice, because the welds I saw coming out of it on the videos and the reviews were not of the quality I would want to see. So I basically asked them if I could review this welder because I really wanted to see what it was capable of, and I wanted to be able to show people and have them realize that YesWelder builds quality MIG welders, and this one is no exception. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you what it comes with, and I'm going to show you how to be successful with this welder, and I'm going to show you the quality of welds that it is capable of if you set it up correctly and use proper components. Because pulse MIG welding of aluminum it's a pretty particular process, and if it's not set up correctly and your settings aren't correct, then you'll struggle. And I can tell you that this is the first pulse MIG welder I've ever owned. So there was a learning curve. And what my goal for today is to show you, number one, how great it welds. Number two, to reduce that learning curve for you so that you don't have to burn up a whole bunch of wire and a whole bunch of consumables trying to get this thing set up. Basically, what I've done is gone through and set up the parameters for the spool gun and for running it through the regular MIG gun. One of the things I was happy to see was that the MIG gun that it comes with is a Binzel 24KD style, which is a much, this isn't a cheap gun. This is a very high quality gun and very robust and heavy duty. It's actually what I run on my 250 Pro. I actually have an actual Binzel 24KD that I bought myself and put it on there because I really like the style of gun and I like the heavy duty quality of it. The consumables are really rugged and they're very easy to switch and change quickly in the field. I don't like the screw-on style. I like the press-on style because the screw-on style invariably I get slag down inside of the cup and it messes up the threads, and then I can't get the cap off. And this is so simple. It's one of the reasons I like the Binzel style. The other thing is that the YesWelder did send me a spool gun to go with it, and I will be showing different parameters and how to weld with the spool gun as well, so that if you order one of these, which I do recommend you get with this, because running wire through the actual MIG gun is more difficult. You definitely have to basically keep the gun straight and out from the welder so that there are not, a bunch of turns like this in it and the wire just creates more friction. Even with the Teflon liner in it, that friction results in slipping back on the drive wheels. And so you'll see that a lot of the companies that are making pulse welders, they tend to run a shorter gun. And that is because of the amount of friction. And they even say in their manuals that you'll want to run your gun out as straight as possible if you're going to actually use the MIG gun. So if you're going to order this welder, I definitely would spend the extra money and get the spool gun, because it'll make your life so much easier. But I will be showing you how to weld with the MIG gun because I have found ways to make this work as well, and very reliably for that matter. Same with this. I've got settings for both, and I'm going to go through those. But first I'm going to show you the interface and how it works and the layout, and then I'm going to show you some sample welds, and I'm also going to take this out in the field. I've actually been taking it out in the field, practicing with it, and it's to the point now that I'm able to take it with me on customers' projects and, you know, weld aluminum in the field, which compared to me bringing along my TIG is a lot simpler and so much quicker. And when you're trying to make a living in a mobile welding business, quicker is more money in your pocket. So those are the things I want to show. And so let's get started, and I'll go through the interface on the welder, and then I'll show you some welds, and I'll take you out in the field. All right, let's go. All right, so let's turn this on, and I'll show you the layout and how to adjust your settings and how to get started. All right, this left button adjusts what a lot of people call trim. This is where you can adjust your voltage up and down. So independent, basically you're adding or subtracting to the synergistic settings. Right now I have it set on aluminum. So these are some of my aluminum settings for a thin aluminum, like 16th inch. Anyway, it's a basic layout. We have mode, which we have regular MIG, pulse MIG, lift TIG, and stick welding. We're going to be doing pulse welding, so we're going to put it down to there. Over here we have the trigger settings. We have regular 2T, which is the standard. Press the button once, it starts, let go, and it stops. We have 4T, whereas you press the button, hold it, and when you let go, it keeps welding. And then when you want to stop, you press it again and let go. And that's 4T. One of the greatest features of this welder is the next one, which is 4TL, and I will go into this later in detail. But what 4TL does is basically allow you to program your start voltage and amperage and your regular burn time amperage, and then what a lot of people call, you know, it's your crater fill. Basically, it's basically a finish amperage and voltage. So basically you push the button and you start, and you get a start voltage and amperage. And when you release, you get your running amperage, which is going to do the bulk of your aluminum weld. And then when you press the button again and hold it, it will go to the finish voltage. So you can actually fill that crater at the end of the weld at a lower amperage. That way you're not going to burn through, and you're not sitting there building up a huge amount. You can lower the amperage and the voltage so that you have a less flow of wire through the gun and a lower amperage. That way you can fill up the crater at the end of your weld, and when you let go, then it stops. This is actually one of my favorite features in this whole machine, is because I used to have a Hobart MIG welder, and I bought the spool gun with it because I wanted to do aluminum welding. Well, one of the things you learn very quickly about aluminum MIG welding is that the heat builds up very quickly in aluminum. And so what you get is your starting amperage. As you start to go, it starts off really cold. Or if you set the amperage so that it's perfect for the start, a few inches in, 2 or 3, 4 at the most usually if it's thicker material, that amperage now, the heat has begun to run ahead of your gun, and you either stop because it's going to burn through, or it does burn through. And so you're only capable of actually welding very short areas. It's either that, or you set your amperage perfect for that long weld, and the first inch or two until the heat builds up in the metal is very cold, and so you don't get a lot of penetration, and there's no real strength at that beginning of the joint. And so you either have to come back after you've done that, come back and, you know, weld a spot at the beginning of the weld, and at the other end of the weld it's usually gone concave at that point, and you now have a big crater at the end of your weld because the heat has built up so much. That's one of the great parts of this 4T, is it takes care of this. You don't have to worry about, if you set your settings correctly with a lower amperage at the end, you can fill your crater and have a nice structural weld that, you know, you started out at the beginning on your first pull with the higher amperage because your metal is cold. You weld for, depending on how thick the metal is, sometimes I'll weld a 1/4 inch, sometimes I'll weld a 1/2 inch until the heat starts to build up, and then I'll let go, and the weld then begins to flow perfectly all the way through. You can do long welds with no problem, and then when you get to the end you can press the button again, have a cold finish where you fill your crater, and then you're done. This is probably the most important part of aluminum pulse welding with a MIG welder. You don't have these problems with TIG because you have a foot pedal, and you can increase the amperage at the beginning, lower it as the heat builds up, and then at the end you can let up and do a finish button on the end of your TIG weld. That way you have a good structural weld. So this allows you to do production welding quality in a basically a home unit that doesn't cost anywhere near what the production units cost. So that's one of my favorites. It also has, if you're on regular MIG, it also has a spot feature if you just want to do spot welding, and it has a whole set of parameters so you can set up everything you want on that. Here we have wire size. I'm set on aluminum, and so in aluminum you only have 35 thousandths or 45 thousandths. If I switch to regular MIG, and then you'll see that you have all the way down to 23 thousandths, 35 thousandths, 30 thousandths, and you will notice that it didn't go to 45. The 45 thousandths is only available on aluminum welding, because this is only a 200 amp welder, and 35 thousandths will do everything you need with steel. Over here we have a menu for double pulse. Right now you can see I have double pulse off. If you hit it again, you get weld specs, where you can set all sorts of different parameters. When you're on 4T, you can set your beginning voltage, your secondary voltage, your initial amperage, and your secondary amperage, your induction, your run-in, which is an increased flow of wire at the beginning, you have a hot start in case you wanted to boost up, you know, the amperage at the beginning. And then you have pre-gas, which I have set at 0.6 seconds. Post-gas, I have it set at 3 seconds. Probably turn that down just a little bit. And then we have spot timer. If you were set on spot, you could adjust the spot time. If you were to go to double pulse right here and turn it on, once double pulse is on, this will stay on, and then we can go to double pulse settings, and then you can adjust frequency and duty cycle and your base amperage, or amperage. So this is how you set on the double pulse the in-between amperage, pulse length, and so that's the frequency, is how often per second, and then the duty cycle, how much of the percentage of the time on do you want it to be over on the secondary pulse. Over here we have the button that sets for aluminum. You have aluminum silicon for 4043 and aluminum magnesium for 5356. You have stainless steel, you have steel welding with a CO2 argon mix, and then we have let's see here. And if you're on regular MIG, you can select CO2 as one of the choices also. Straight CO2. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Alright, so one of the things I want to talk to you about before we get welding here is in MIG welding aluminum, especially pulse here, I had to basically learn that the stick out needs to be at least 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And that was something that I'm still kind of struggling with. I've retrained my brain by doing a whole bunch of welding with it, and so I think I've got it down. The other thing is working with 4T, especially 4TL, where I have different welding parameters for each press of the button and release. That is something I did have to retrain myself for too. So know that you're gonna have to do some practice with this to get good with it. And the other thing is gas flow. Gas flow for aluminum MIG, especially pulse, needs to be a lot higher than you're used to. Normally I run about 20, especially if I'm outside, I'll run up to like 25 CFM for my CO2 or argon. For this, I'm running straight argon, and I'm running about 42 to 45 CFM of gas. And what that does is give you good coverage, good cleaning, and not a lot of black soot like you normally see on a lot of MIG aluminum welds. So that being said, I'm gonna crank this up and I'll show you what this thing can do. All right? All right, this first plate you're gonna see is with 16th inch aluminum 3000 series. All right, that's 16th inch aluminum. That's pretty sweet. All right, you can see I'm still a little bit cold on the beginning. I'm gonna have to increase the amperage on that, but you'll see that the field of the weld is nice and clean. And you can see how I use the 4T at the end to fill in the crater with a button. This helps to prevent cracking in the end of the weld, and so that is why you'll hear different tones in the arc as I go along. At the beginning, I start off with a hot weld, and I needed to stay on there a little bit longer and get it going before I switched over. But that's what you'll see. You'll see a higher pulse rate at the beginning, and then it'll settle in. You'll see the secondary, and then at the end you'll hear an even lower pulse rate when I'm filling the crater. That is the beauty of this 4TL setting on this machine. That's pretty amazing. I've never been able to get this kind of quality of weld on 16th inch with a MIG welder before, so that says a lot for this welder. Alright, let's do some more welding.
I turned up the heat on the primary beginning of the weld for 16th inch, and I'm going to run another bead and show you what that looks like. And you can see the quality in the front.
Okay, I've got the MIG gun attached, and I'm running Alcatech 47 thousandths, 1.2 millimeter, and I'm running just straight off, no more spool gun, just the MIG gun. And now I'm going to switch programs and get it set up for 1/4 inch. Alright, this is 1/4 inch, 60-61, and I'll show you how this thing welds with the MIG gun. All right. Yeah, and take a close look at this. So, this one I've got programmed pretty darn close. You can see that with the higher flow of argon, you're getting a lot more cleaning. That is one of the benefits of that higher argon flow. You can see that I've got a crater fill at the end. That's the beauty of the 4TL. And that's a nice looking MIG weld. Not a bunch of splatter all over, not a bunch of soot. This thing welds very clean. I'm very impressed. Alright, let's run another one so you can see more of the 1/4 inch. Alright, this is 1/4 inch, 60-61. Alright, so you can see I haven't brushed it. We got good cleaning action. It was a little offset a little bit at the beginning there, and then once I released and went into the regular amperage, it flowed nice. And then you can see I filled the crater at the end with the last of the 4TL settings. But that's 1/4 inch, 60-61. Alright, so this is 60-61, 1/8 inch. All right, this is 1/8 inch 6061. All right, this is 1/8 inch 6061. All right, so I brought the YesWelder Pulse MIG out with me in the field today. I'm doing some repairs on a guy's truck box. He had this built by another guy, and he wasn't happy with a lot of the construction, and it wasn't watertight, and that was one of the things he specified. So he asked me to do some repairs on it and make it so that it will be watertight. So what I'm doing today is welding in some pieces in the corners here. One of the things is weather stripping needs to come down and go across, and he left these ends open, and so I've made some little fill plates that I'm going to weld in. I've got for both sides, and I've got to do the other end as well. Anyway, that's what we're doing today, and I'll set the camera up so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so I've got the fill plates put in on both sides, and I've got the straight MIG gun, and I'm going to pulse weld these plates in and repair this box. All right, so I've got this end welded up too. I just wanted to say that welding out here in the field with the YesWelder MIG, this pulse MIG is so much cleaner than original spool gun type without pulse that I can get repairs done a lot quicker, and it makes things a lot easier. All right, so here's a collection of test plates that I did testing out the YesWelder YWM-211P. I'll give you some close-ups so you can see. This end are the 16th inch that I did with the spool gun, and none of these test plates have I brushed or cleaned in any way. This is exactly how they welded. You can see that they haven't been brushed. If you look, there is some amounts of soot around the outside. If I had brushed this, none of that would be there, and you can see how shiny and clean these welds are. That was done with the spool gun. 1/8 inch I believe I did with the spool gun as well. Might be one in here that I did with the MIG gun. And you can see they haven't been cleaned. Here are the 1/4 inch. This was all done with the MIG gun straight off of the welder. You can see, again, nice clean welds with good cleaning action, good penetration. You can see I'm getting better at filling the crater at the end. And here's a good shot of that. This is 1/4 inch. And you can see that I got good heat at the beginning, switched over to the standard flow with the 4TL setting on the trigger. And then at the end you can see that I filled the crater with a button with the final press of the trigger. Anyway, that's just a collection of how nice this welder welds aluminum. Alright guys, so that's it for this review, and I hope you enjoyed the footage of this thing welding, and I hope you enjoyed the layout of how to set it up. I'm going to put a link in the description for a table that shows all of the welding parameters that I set up and programmed in for my different thicknesses, and hopefully this will help get you started so that you can be successful welding with this. The majority of the settings you'll see are for aluminum, and that is because what I figure the majority of people that are going to buy this is because they want to do aluminum pulse welding. So it's a great MIG welder as far as welding steel, but where this thing really shines is, as you can see, in the welding of aluminum. The price point that they're asking for this is going to attract a lot of people. The next closest competitor, and probably the leader in the market, is the HTP, and that welder with an aluminum gun is $2,400. So there's quite a gap between these two, and if you're just starting, getting into aluminum pulse welding, this is a great way to get started, because you only have to put out $800 to $1,000 depending on whether you get the spool gun. So if you have any questions or concerns or whatever, go ahead, leave me a comment and a question, and I'll be glad to answer them for you and try and help as best I can. Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks!